All right, we are live with another stream. Let's give everybody some time to join in. This one will be quite a special one. Hello, everyone. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Also, after kind of my initial proposition, I will be giving out access to the studio so that people can join in. So let me put that at least to some initial people I want to get chat with today. And let's see, what else do we have going on here? Okay, there was something of an interest. Okay, that's okay, not the ones I was looking for. Sweet, sweet, sweet. All right. So we'll have Alim Ghaffar joining me shortly. We'll be probably talking about the technological accelerationists. So exciting stuff. And so that's kind of where all of this comes together, or at least part of it. So what is about it today? The name of the chat is called AI and the Future of Industry and Society, because I think those are kind of well aligned. And let's see, what was it, a year or two ago? Nobody was really talking. Well, actually, now it's about 2 years, 3 years ago. Nobody was talking about AI much, or it was just at the point of laughing stock. And today, it's everybody is just cannot stop talking about it, and it's everybody's mind. Not everybody, but quite a few people are panicking about what it can do, how it's going to affect the society, how it's already affecting the society. I think I'm going to quickly jump on kind of this video that somebody posted on how people are already creating, not sure what exactly, some world building, 3D, and you can see quite advanced. Not sure what the tool it is, but it's kind of probably some private stuff. But building 3D sceneries or places like this in the future is more likely going to happen. We've already seen it with phones and everything. So technology has advanced significantly over the last year or two, and it's probably going to only accelerate, especially given the massive investments that are going in. Kind of find it funny because I think a lot of the people who were before, say in the cryptocurrencies, all that stuff, have I would say a lot of the not so like tech bros, but a lot of people who were kind of there just for the money have moved to AI for the money. So which is kind of interesting now to watch that the crypto sector is a little bit starved of funds in not like in a big way, but still compared to how it used to be 3 years ago, things are not that good. And obviously another question is, how is this going to impact development, specifically web development, the society as a whole? I would kind of deposit it's going to have a significant impact. Probably not right away. We'll have like slowly, and then suddenly there is going to be a big impact. We have the entire, let's say, technological accelerationist movement that is going. Oh, it's just the beginning of the big future, and everything is going to be amazing. We even have, and I think I kind of want to play this one from Twitter from Mark Anderson. Let's see. Let me actually restart sharing this just to make sure that. Okay, also share top audio so that we have the audio here as well. So let's hear what he has to say.
This concern people have about machines or AI or robots, basically replacing human labor, which we could talk about. But the short thing on that is that there's a bunch of reasons that never actually is a concern, and one of the reasons that isn't a concern is because if technology gets really, really good at doing things, then that represents a radical improvement in the productivity rate, which I talked about. The productivity rate is basically the measure of how much output the economy can generate per unit input. If we got on the kind of exponential productivity ramp that you're talking about, what would happen is the price of all existing products and services would crash. What if the equivalent of like a Stanford education cost, basically a penny? What if the equivalent of, basically printing a house cost a penny? What if prostate cancer gets cured and that costs a penny? Like that's what you get in this world of like basically this sort of world everybody thinks they're worried about a runaway AI. It's like basically the prices crash. And at that point, as a consumer, like as a person, like you don't need much money to have a material lifestyle that is wildly better, right, than what even the richest person on the planet has right now. Right. And so maybe in the outer years of this, maybe you spend an hour a day or something making, I don't know, handmade leather shoes, for people who want to like buy shoes that are like special and valuable because, they were made entirely by a person. And maybe, that you make so much money, the value of that one pair of leather shoes that you made this month, maybe it's like $100, but like the $100 will buy you the equivalent of like what $10 million will buy you today. Like those are the kinds of scenarios that you get into. And so once again, there's just this like incredible good news story on the other side of this that like and it's everything I just said, everything I just said sounds like crazy and Pollyannish and utopian and all that. But like literally, here's what I will claim. I am operating according to the actually understood mechanisms of how the economy actually operates. Everything I just said is consistent with what's in every standard economics textbook. This always this.
Okay, so that's kind of the, I would say, utopian view that everything is going to be super cheap. You only have to work a week a year or something like that to live like a person kind of lives today. I think this is extremely utopian because this has been promised for over 100 years and is promised, by a lot of, how should I say it, by a lot of things. And of course, some might say this is propaganda from the AI industry, and they have different discussions. For me, I think, this is bit beyond, because still things are going to cost, like energy, raw materials, all those things are going to be costly. Even in the online world, the software world, the servers need energy, again, and kind of build them. Let's say, even that we managed to really get with AI to minuscule cost, then still, I think there would be cost might be lower than it's today. I highly doubt that, because then, unless there is a robust competition, eventually it's going to kind of tend towards monopolies, and then they just start becoming inefficient, raising prices, and we get into this, I would say, it's a problem or an issue again. So that's kind of one position that things are going to get better. I think it's very much, it was a bit of a discussion a while back, and me and Alan wanted to talk about it. It's kind of the Techno Optimist Manifesto is the main, I should say, showcase or descriptor of this optimism. Personally, I really love about this is the optimism, because a lot of, or I would say overwhelming majority of messaging that we get about today's society, about the future, is dystopian and death culty. Always the end of the world, everybody is going to go. So as I think the manifesto very says, we are told to be miserable about the future. And I think that's really not the approach, or not what's going to happen in the future, unless we kind of follow the people who are telling us everything is going to be bad. So besides, we had a lot of people in the past that were like this, constantly telling us something bad. I think if I want to go about all the doomsday times, or times I should have been dead by now, it was like 4 or 5 times already since I was born, maybe even more. So a lot of these promises of doom and gloom never materialize, and big part of that is technological advancement. That whenever an issue came, and there was an option to solve for that, adjust for that, sometimes with nudging from the government, then it was it was delivered, the solution was delivered and found and fixed. So there are a certain solution, but at the same time, this kind of led, I think, with this manifesto, people believing, okay, we can fix everything through technology and continual technological improvement, which so it's then like just innovate. There's a problem, puts technology to it, and that, I think, is also a wrong approach, because with all of this, I do believe there has been something significantly lost, some, say, human value, or well, not necessarily like human value, but something that has kept these societies together. And this isn't the glue of the society, I would say. And this is not necessarily something that you can see that 1 year have it and another year it's lost. This is a multi-generational process of destabilization and breakdown. And I think the sinister part of it is that it's once it's broken, it's extremely hard to fix or repair. And it's also kind of very hard to see that has been broken. I think I have been, in my personal life, experiencing this a lot of times, or a lot of anecdotes, you could say, and especially like once you start comparing generations to generations, the expectations and all that stuff, that kind of comes to mind. So I think this, despite me liking and preferring to the alternatives, this is far from what I would call the optimal way forward. It's also, Andreessen Horowitz, that's an investor, and a lot of people are investing. So I would say there's a significant professional deformation here in this regard, because they kind of see it all through the eyes of investing and all that stuff. And I think they are missing things that cannot be quantified, and sometimes are in, say, direct contradiction to innovation and making more capital and free markets as well, because it's society is very complex, history is very complex, and I think there has been quite a big push, especially in the West, to kind of separate ourselves from the past. And I study history more as a hobby and of an interest. The same thing with philosophy, psychology, different political visions, all that stuff. Because I aspire to be a sci-fi writer, so I kind of need to have this, and I'm kind of trying to get my kind of ideal vision of the future into my books. The problem is, of course, ideal, and then I have kind of what's more likely to happen, and that one is a bit more challenging as well. Let's see. Still waiting for Alan to get into this. So let me check. Okay. So what do you guys think the future holds? So I'll start with I would say the general impact on the web development or web developers industry. Given how we already had some let's see, what is the website? Let me quickly see if I can have it. If I have it somewhere saved nicely. Oh man, apparently I don't. Let's see. Nope, apparently I don't have that saved. That's my mistake on my part. Let me see if I can do a quick Google search here. Yes, 10web. Here we go. So here, for example, we have this is 10web.io, which kind of sells itself. Oh, we are the AI, web builder. But given kind of from what I looked at, it's kind of generally like some static templating websites, so to get you quickly started, and all the other stuff. But don't expect, I would say, kind of potentially, some templates, but I wouldn't say to expect much of it beyond that for now. That's a big caveat for now, because I do believe all these things will be changing, especially when it's right now. There's a lot of money around images, pictures, creativity. So it is going to be changing, especially when it comes to design. That's going to become the first thing, and I think there's already another AI company that goes, okay, we'll take your Figma and get you your HTML, CSS, all that stuff out of that. Figma can do a little bit of that already on its own, but this one is kind of supposedly more advanced. So I think primarily, across larger sets. And we do have other things like GitHub Copilot for the coding side. So from my own experience, it's all about right now it's kind of the basics. A lot of time it's wrong. Probably More often than not, it's wrong with the code, but it can get like the basic loops and kind of repetitive code done out quickly. So right now it's becoming a better and better assistant that frees you to write the more challenging code, which though creates a problem now that or it's a code like that's like a somebody fresh out of college or similar level like beginner web developer would normally be working on, which creates a problem for our starter or people beginning web development, because why should companies hire them if they can get super cheap AI to do what those people do? And of course, these things are not going to be staying at that level. They will keep on improving until they can do, I would say, quiet, advanced stuff. But similar, like in the creative field, the large language models will not be able to create anything new. So it will all be trained on open source, and it will also be trained, in the big corporation, because of course, you think as an individual developers you are going to have access to the best AI. This about the field. No, that's going to be priced a pretty penny behind a nice paywall, and you will have to be a big corporation to, I think, get it. But for that corporation, it's going to be much cheaper than having in-house teams to develop most of their stuff, especially if they are not making anything new or creative in the field or are not pushing the technology. But so eventually, it's going to grow again more to cover more and more use cases. So even mid-level and some senior positions will be made obsolete with this. But as we kind of we've already gotten rid of the juniors, we got off the mid-level and some seniors. So eventually, we might find ourselves without anybody making it up to the more advanced places, or I could say more advanced positions, and that might create a crisis. That suddenly there will be just probably everybody like in the web development today will still have a chance to make it potentially to the top positions, though even you might not be able once it starts getting on the usually more of like the senior level developer. It might be super difficult for, I think, most of us to maintain a steady job unless it's like your own startup or something akin to that, which is in a way good thing, because then you will have more startups and all that stuff, or at least that's the argument. I do not believe so, because say most people are not geared towards it, and I speak from experience. In general, if I can just go and play Skyrim or something all day and then have to worry about anything, then why not get into the stressfulness of getting startups and all that stuff. So it's that, but there is but I think at that point we'll probably get closer to general artificial intelligence, which means it will be able to start potentially do more creative stuff. That is, if that is even possible, but I think it is technologically possible, because I think if you gotta cover it, and then we'll get into okay, is it sentient or not, but that's getting a bit ahead of everything. Of course, this is going to have, and this is the main point here I'm talking about, is huge impact on the industry, because the critical open source of course will get sponsorship, and they will have AI going in and for example fixing and improving the Linux kernel and all the big projects. So that's all going to be there. So where do we go? Where do we go from here? So we'll have only the small open sources that cannot afford to have AI, or maybe it will be like if GitHub. So if it says, oh, if you are open source, then you can, get access to these AI. The problem we get, like in creative, in writing and stuff like that, is if you don't have any new input, then from humans, then usually there is nothing new to get from the data. It will start eating its own data, and it's going to spiral out of control and total collapse. I don't think that's going to happen because there's a lot of thinkers out there, a lot of other people who will keep on writing code. But who knows? Maybe they will move to more creative fields, or just will be building with AI. So right now we are looking at, with all these scenarios, that the web developer and you could say, in essence, most programmers are not going to make it, and those who few will be employed for quite hefty sums by big corporations, and they will be just doing some of the high-end level stuff to make sure that the AI doesn't lobotomize itself. That would be one approach. What I would like to, and another big thing about that is, of course, I would say, reach the peak of tragedy of commons with open source. Where suddenly people are even less interested in, how should I say it, in supporting any open source, and we get let me see if I can find it. Yes. And let's look at this XKCD comic or caricature, where this is kind of the top where we are building all our applications and everything, and then we have this massive structure here. At the bottom is the kernel, GNU, Linux, all that stuff. Or actually, it might be somewhere like even here. And as we have seen in the past years, there is always some project that some guys thanklessly maintaining for years, and then he will just be like, okay, screw it, I'm time for retirement or something like that. And as we have seen with recent breakage, we also have state actors trying to get into these little known, little supported libraries to insert backdoors and everything. So that is all going to come to a big head, and going to, I think, very much coincide with the peak of or AI being ascendant in this area. So we then have first to kind of resolve what is the future of open source. I would go and even go as far and say that open source is in danger. I think for what we currently have, that's going to stay as is, and we'll definitely have many new open source projects in years to come. But I think new open source is going to be harder and harder to come by, as we have seen with MongoDB. Redis recently changing their licensing because people who are pretty much selling their product on their services are not contributing back, be it with code or be it with monetary support for the projects. And in these cases, it's not a charity, so either everything is going to go to become a charity of some sort to kind of maintain people. We'll have, of course, the group of hobbyists who do it for free out of their free time and interest. But at the end of the day, you need to eat and you need to feed your family. And then I think there's going to be a lot of open source being abandoned because it's just not viable. And eventually, in order, for secure, we see even more and more security breaches through open source and more issues. So eventually, it's either going to come again under some sort of a foundation or nonprofit that's going to try and maintain people to kind of work with the stuff. But that's going to be the big corporate or the stuff that's use big companies who can pour good money and not even notice that on their balance sheets. So that's going to mostly negatively affect the small ones, which just can't afford it. And we'll see the rise of walled gardens. So you kind of like with Apple, you kind of buy into the walled garden. You have people that maintain it. You pay, to be in that ecosystem, and that is pretty much where you be. So it's kind of like a dystopian view, but still possible to get there. So that's kind of the one aspect. So that's one the aspect. And how that is going to impact the web development. But before I get into that, let me welcome here our guest, Alim Ghaffar. Hi, Alim.
Hi, guys. Hi, Jan. How are you?
Well, right now we've gotten, I would say, over the gloom and doom.
Okay.
Not finishing there yet, but we'll be going into that and then try to get some good light out of that. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the reasons I'm kind of having this is to have discussion with you and everybody else here as well, so that we can kind of peers into possibilities. I don't think any of the things that we are going to be predicting here are going to be exactly right or wrong necessarily. More likely to be wrong than right. That's kind of when we, whenever we talk about future. Let me find some nice. Yes, let's go with this one. When we talk about the future, there is a million of ways that we can be wrong. One of my favorite, say, YouTuber that talks about does historical analysis, and some prediction says, when predicting future, I'm betting against God because there's just so many ways I can be wrong, and so very few I can be right. And that's also why usually these are broad predictions.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there is this notion in finance that you can predict out in very, very short time frames fairly accurately, but as you go further and further out, entropy ensues, and that has an impact on how accurate you might be. I mean, you might be accurate within like a narrow range at very, very beginning, but then that range widens bigger and bigger over time. I always thought that to be a really interesting, observation that they have made, because time in finance is really a big deal. And I know that when I was doing my options pricing classes, that these were things that would show up again and again and again. So, yeah, I think trying to even predict out. I mean, we have Elon Musk predicting out that in 2 years we're going to have, general AGI, artificial general intelligence being superior to human beings. And then you have Jan LeCun, I think it was a couple of days ago, who's the, considered one of the godfathers of AI, right? Who's over at Facebook saying, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think in that shorter frame. He says that, that my 4-year-old or, a 4-year-old has like over 6,000 hours of processing of data from the time it's born to the age of 4 at a high rate, in terms of a high bit rate, and even the most sophisticated AIs today just can't match that. So, it's not even as smart as a dog in that sense. We have the
Yeah.
sense that there is something happening, and it seems like intelligence, but he really doesn't see it that way. And it was very interesting to get these contrasting views.
Yeah, I think a nice one comparison, I said, it's kind of brute forcing language. So
Mhm.
it puts in word, but it's like, calculator. It knows
Yeah.
what, words to put there, but or something like the calculator can put in, numbers, but calculator doesn't know math.
Right.
It doesn't understand it. It just puts the numbers that, the programming tells it to do. So I think that's kind of where we are. But sadly, for I would say most of the tasks, that's enough. That is, enough, and in many cases, it even exceeds. It exceeds, what is needed there. So
Yeah.
it is going to have a significant impact, especially as things get better. The big thing is, of course, now that with this, it has sent billions of dollars into this industry, into the research here. There's a lot of competition. One of the recent news I was reading was that Microsoft is like creating a new supercomputer worth of billions of dollars, trying to get to the next AI stuff.
Mhm.
So it's going to get there. I think similar like we had with the other, or like with this kind of race of ChatGPT and all that stuff. It
Sure.
was slowly and then suddenly. So
Mhm.
we'll see like rumbling for a little bit, right? Everybody's going to try to claim, is the time it's coming, and or we have it. So we're kind of slowly, and then suddenly when it hits, it's going to be another big impact. And usually then it's like year or two before the first companies come who can like really fully utilize that discovery and with that. So that's why I say, why we're looking at the feature to see where this can come
Mhm.
and what could be the possible outcomes,
Mhm.
so that we can prepare.
I think
Yeah, go
if
ahead.
I can share with you, there's an observation I've made over the years. Um, being in the field, it's a good thing. The thing about being in the field a while is that if you step back a little bit, you can kind of like get the sense of things that
Mhm.
are common and things that are not. And so it's the message always is it's different this time, right? So this time it's different.
Yeah.
And what I notice with new technologies that come out, and I love new technologies, I think you know that about me, right? I
Mhm.
embrace them, but I'm also cautious because I'm a human being. I'm a humanist, and I believe that technology should serve the needs of people and our planet and things are out there. So I think we should try to get the most out of these new features and these new things that come out, but without necessarily taking it to the extreme, because there are costs. There's social costs, there's natural costs, there are all these other costs that come in. Some of them are knowable, some of them are unknowable, and you only find out about them later on, and then you have to figure out, well, what do we do about this? So this has been the history of mankind and technology with mankind, I think, um, based on my cursory observations. And by the way, I'm in by no means like a learned historian in all of this. What does Joanna say? You know the big.
So I love this. This is,
Uh-huh.
what the biggest problem with pushing all things AI is?
Mhm.
Wrong direction. I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes,
Yeah.
which I think is really nicely put.
Yeah.
Uh, how
So
where I feel like
what I
this
was
is
going
going.
on, I mean, this is a good observation. We should jump on this in a minute. Let me just finish the thought I
Yes.
had before with you, which was you were jumping on this notion about the problem with the predictions and so on that people make, and predictions really being you know um, in a sense, the likelihood or the probability of the prediction that you make today is going to be right 10 years down the road is probably very small, because they're just so going to happen in between. And what I noticed in terms of the observations of new technologies coming out, and this is where I want to go, was that we always come out, we say, oh, this is a great thing, it can do everything. And then you get people jumping in to prove that it can do everything. And money is thrown at it. And inevitably, it acts like a sieve. It acts like a filter, right? And what happens is we end up seeing the real use cases that get the biggest benefit out of them, sort of surviving. The other ones, many of them, if they have enough money, if they have enough manpower, if they have enough marketing behind it, will stick around for a while until it's unsustainable. And then it'll go away. And if I could go back to LeCun for a minute, one of the things he says is that all the attention right now is on large language models, which are great at what they do, but that is not AI as far as he's concerned. And the problem is it's taking away attention from other novel things that we should be doing to get to, the sort of, general AI. And it's interesting because what he's saying is that no real innovation is happening now in the order that, these transformers and these generative large language models came out, when, excuse me, when that paper, All You Need Is Attention, came out, that kind of drove the current move towards transformers and now these, excuse me, large language models. That was an innovation. It took a while, actually. Like, that paper came out, I have to look back, but I think it's almost 10 years ago now. It's a while. And then it took a while for Transformers to become really significant. But now, like, it's gone down this, this boulder is rolling down the hill, gathering all the detritus around it. And it's sucking all the air out. I'm mixing my metaphors. It's sucking all the air out of the room, where there are other things that people are working on that might be very significant, but are not getting the attention and are not getting the money towards it. So, just want to throw that out there in terms of, like, when we look at technology, we should always be mindful that when it says that, oh, it's different this time, we're all in, everybody's going in, and this is all that everybody's paying attention to. Remember, there's going to be a lot of wasted effort along the edges someplace on use cases and promises that don't get delivered. And I will go back to just a few years ago, if you remember, that the entire blockchain field was exactly like this.
Exactly, yeah. So that's kind of what I hinted at previously as well. And I think this is really encapsulated in this, from Joanna, that it's right now the focus is, on creating the next Shakespeare, creating the next movie, and all these, could say, creative fields. I just also showed here the the 10Web, how you can create your own website with AI, all that stuff, which is probably going to get even more into it, instead of kind of getting rid of the mundane stuff. But at the same time, going back to taking care of the laundry, the dishes. That's what the laundromat, the dishwasher was invented for, to make even stuff. And the result was not that suddenly, okay, now we can, now the woman can become artistic, write books, paint pictures, all that. Instead, the result was, okay, now you go into the factory because you don't have to spend as much time at home. So that's
somehow or the other, you have to pay for that dishwasher, right? So,
so that had also, I would say, an interesting impact on the society as a whole. I think we are kind of still, kind of the transition from, or the impact it has on families, that now both parents have to work and to maintain kind of their standard of living that normally before just need one working adult. And I've talked before this previously, my biggest issue with all of this is that we are creating a system or societal and economical system with no redundancy, especially for times of crisis. which I think was also like one of the reasons why Britain and America could fight World War II, or all of the countries, is because they could send pretty much all of their men to the front and have women take over in the workforce, in the factories, and so on, which just is not possible today, at least not without pretty much scuttling half of your economy in the service sector and other sectors where women are predominant in those fields. So that's I would say a big problem.
I don't think it's for lack of trying. I read another article recently where there is a company in New York, and it's only done a handful of these. I don't remember the name of it, but it's run by this Chinese American fellow who, when you purchase your fast food, you typically do your end of transaction with a cashier, and you hand over your money, and then they take your money, then they give you the bag of food or whatever it is. And now this company basically is using as cashiers a bank of virtual folks out in the Philippines, and it's basically televised. And he's experimenting with this right now, and he's
I saw that.
You read this article? Yeah, it's about 4 or 5 restaurants that he has in New York. He doesn't disclose a lot of information about it, but that has always been the thing that has been said that is sort of immune to offshoring virtualization, is this high contact transactions that happen where it's person to person. And so my point is that when we're talking about redundancy and people in the workforce doing things, and this being one of those last points, the last mile, as I said before, it's not for the lack of trying. There is somebody trying right now to figure out how to do that, and then take that.
I think the same thing with say, oh, you cannot replace cooks, you cannot replace the cashiers at McDonald's, all that stuff, which is nonsense. We have it here; it's happening everywhere. Pretty much, it's happening now in California as they have increased the minimum wage. The result is far out have the cashiers adding self-serve kiosks, and even in the kitchen there's a lot of robots already that are like experimental. I think, not sure if there's like any large production wise that are already able to prepare most of the meals, because it's in the end of the day, especially in the fast food, it's a production line. Just they have like pictures. Okay, first step, you do this, you do that. So it's bun, meat, cheese, bun, next. So it's not difficult for the most part, but also kind of with all of this is a very nice website called WTF happened in 1971, which lists a lot of you can see it's here all the different graphs. Let me go here of different things, and usually 1971 or a few years before or after being kind of the inflection point of a lot of these metrics.
What do they think this is the cause of, like Bretton Woods conference or something else?
Yeah, I don't exactly recall. I think it might have been when the Federal Reserve was established or something like that.
No, the Federal Reserve was established much earlier than this.
Okay, but
yeah, Bretton Woods was when they took the United States off the gold standard.
Yes, I think that might be it. I would probably call it the time discovering that you can use other people's money or infinitely get money and then buy votes and everything, or do other things. So
I'm not going there.
It's I think this one specifically is interesting, that you can see that just before it kind of started to reverse this trend, and then it just
But we went through from 1971 on. We went through a decade of what was called stagflation, right? Which is like
Yes.
there was very little growth and so on. So
there's
remember-
a lot of things that you can, and with these things, it's also remember like there is a lot of inertia
Mhm.
in them. So to turn them around, you need to wait can take a lot of time. But it's very like interesting to kind of think, and this is also another thing I want to kind of put forward to is that there's a lot of other things that impact what's happening.
Mhm.
So that's one big thing to keep in mind. That's also where when you think about the future, the further you go, the more variables are going to impact have impact on the predictions and or how things develop, and then you can have like completely crazy events happening. Nice example I can always give to this, my favorite author, when he was talking about one of his books, which is kind of like a fictional history of where some cataclysm happened in the 17th century, I think, and a lot of destruction. The oceans have risen, so now we have the Czech Kingdom, which has, of course, a strong navy, has colonies, and is fighting the Russian Tsar, with the Russian Tsardom and all that stuff. So fun, and he has kind of pretty much said like one of the battle I've modeled after the battle for Midway, but I had to make the Czech side to have larger losses and everything, significant losses, because otherwise the critics would label it as unrealistic and impossible, breaking suspense of disbelief, even though so there are events like Battle of Midway which were just so crazy in their results and how they played out, that if you try to write it in fiction, you get the middle figure from a lot of people as unrealistic. So that is one of the big things to also consider here. And with that, I kind of want to switch how I would kind of see the future of the industry, as the current AI that gets even better and replaces definitely the beginning programmers and even mid-level programmers, and potentially starts encroaching on the senior programmers. So what we'll have is, of course, big corporations, like especially technical corporations, will maintain small teams of developers to work on either stuff related to furthering the AI or special projects that require a lot of human expertise that the AI doesn't have, because as things right now there's brute forcing things, but for this project they will need people who have deep knowledge. And then we get into the problem that suddenly we don't have people being able to really get into the field, because if they beginner programmer, say he goes or she goes to college, gets a degree, and what, because you have a degree and everything, but over the say 4 or 6 years when you were studying all of this, the AI is much better. It has the knowledge of the top developers in the world. So these people will not be able to find work because they will be too expensive compared to AI to hire. So I think initially we'll see, and not just in web development, I think this is going to be across multiple disciplines, we'll see a collapse in these professions. So a lot of people are probably going to retreat to let's say trade schools and learning trades which you need, muscles or doing something physically, at least until the robots improve in such a way that that's also
Yeah,
going to
let me ask you something, because Bureau of Labor Statistics has indicated that there's a surplus of jobs today, right?
Mhm.
For developers, not enough developers out there. So you have companies like Google that are saying you don't have to have a college degree anymore. We have these, purpose-built courses on our site. You go through them, and so if you want to be a data analyst, you want to be, a machine learning engineer, right? We've got these courses and so on. So they're trying to shortcut because there is a lack of people out there, even with computer science degrees, that don't have this critical skill, right? They're looking for skills rather than just for broad-based education. So there's this notion of surplus of jobs out there because there aren't enough developers to fill the roles. The question is, now that you have these assistive technologies for developers like Copilot and so on, do you think that pool of open opportunity now shrinks because you can get so much
Yes.
more productivity out of the existing pool of hired people that you don't need those extra hands anymore? Do you think that happens as part of this consequentially?
Yes, I think there's this one of the things also has been the layoffs with the big corporations, so that's going to fill a lot of that. But also this, as you mentioned, this, yes, I do believe that is going to have play significant impact.
The thing
Probably in the
the
coming years as people learn more about it and integrate it into their processes.
The observation with the layoffs, though, is that the layoffs are not really affecting those people as much because they appear to be getting jobs pretty much immediately afterwards. So even though companies, they're basically, I think, right-sizing projects, right? They're moving people away from projects that were over capacity and are not as profitable anymore onto new projects now that require different skills. So the people that have the skill sets here are getting laid off. They're finding jobs elsewhere because maybe, some small company couldn't afford to hire, a good web developer before because it was just too expensive. The opportunity, if you were a web developer, was to try to go to the FANG or somebody that paid as well as a FANG.
Yeah.
And now they could kind of fill in or backfill those spots, right? And maybe you could get a spot there because of that. And you'll take a job because if you have a lifestyle, you have to maintain it, right? So maybe there's something there that's going on. I think that's, that might be one of the explanations as to why, even though there are layoffs and there are large layoffs happening everywhere across many of the larger tech firms, the unemployment numbers in the sector don't seem to, bear out like there is a growing, lack of opportunity, right? So it seems, the story seems to be that they are getting jobs. Whether they're getting jobs at the same pay scale or not is something that's not measured, I think, right? So we don't know. So you might get another job, but it might not pay as well, or you might get something that pays as well. We don't know. We don't know. But I think, to your point, I would agree probably. No, I would agree that there is a good chance that in doing this move over, or this sort of secular change that's happening right now in this field, that certain types of things are being de-emphasized and new things are being emphasized in terms of where they want to put their effort and time. But the kinds of jobs, by the way, for data science or machine learning or LLM specific people, when you take a look at the qualifications, they're much higher level educational qualifications that are looked at. They want people with PhD specifically in these types of categories.
Yeah, but that's the one that are actually developing it, which
Yeah.
That one is probably will remain there, but to get there is going to become even more difficult because I think the lower positions, where you gain the experience, where you learn the craft, where you learn what's good, what's bad, you are not going to be able to get those because that will already be taken by AI and people making the queries to the AI and making the fixes or with all that. When I was at RIT, I've talked with multiple professors about this issue and everything, and they've been playing with AI and all that stuff.
How's the
stuff a
enrollment?
lot.
Are they affected by enrollment numbers at this point? Because I'm hearing from
No.
other universities that enrollment is down.
RIT is, I would say, a very special case in this. They had the opposite problem, that they over-enrolled people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So in the past year, because I think they were partially worried about this, but they also got more application.
Sure.
RIT is also special that they have the requirements for graduate that you have to have work experience through co-ops. So we have, once you graduate, you have, 9 months or so close to that of work experience already. So that's what's made you more eligible. And so that's why RIT, I would say, is not affected. But with all these things, I said, there is inertia. The same thing as you said, with there is a lot of empty space, a lot of empty positions. I think, especially now with the crisis, a lot of those positions are going to get closed anyways. A lot of them, I would say, have been already also filled with the people getting laid off from the larger companies as they optimize things.
Sure.
And which means there will be less open positions for say, new graduates. And I don't think, especially as companies learn how to utilize AI more efficiently, I don't think there is going to be any more, or it's not going to be increasing. If anything, there's going to be the new field of let's call it AI whisperer, or people who write queries for the AI to do all those things. And I think that's also going to become a new field at the universities. I think that's actually going to become, unless if we stay on this trend, that's going to probably become the largest major. So we'll have the design AI query specialist, or whatever we are going to call it, field for the design. So they will be learning how to optimize the queries, how to achieve the results. The big thing about it is also going to be, and that's going to, I think, increasingly be an issue, is figure out how to kind of distinguish for something that makes sense from the AI, compared to if AI is just faking it. A lot of the things, but that's kind of the second step. I think the first step is going to be with universities. They will have how to integrate AI into the existing processes. So it's going to take a while, but eventually I think we'll get to a point where you have majority, say, of the computing college is going to be, how to program, or how to give in queries to generate, the best the best results, how to do programming. You learn the basics, and then very specific things in regard to the common mistakes of AI and how to solve them. Then you'll have, I think, the core, computer engineering, software engineering is still going to remain, but it's going to be a shell of what it's now in these things. So I think it'll be like, one, like the class that year is going to be maybe like 30 people or so for a college of thousands. It's going to be very specialized. And then you will have another core, which will be, the AI engineering, or the AI professional, which will then go and eventually go to masters and maybe even PhD to code and work on the AI itself. So that's kind of how I see it. And I think as a result of this, as I said, we'll have big companies, will have small engineering departments, especially the technological companies. Most of it that is going to go to AI people who are going to be writing queries and doing all of that stuff, doing maybe quality assurance. I think that will probably get a big one, and finding bugs, reporting it to the AI, and having AI work on it and fixing it. And then I think we'll also see a rise of, I would say, apprenticeship companies that might be maybe in like step after that, where like in
Excuse me. Thank
you know,
you.
medieval ages or other maybe trades. Once you come out of the school, you join, or maybe you maybe even skip university or any school and just go immediately as an apprentice to these companies where you will be learned. You know, you will learn from senior
Mhm.
developer, or at that point would be master developer, web developer, or master database architect. You will become, you know, their
Well, isn't it
apprentice.
also, you know, a model that universities themselves could reinvent themselves this way? And they probably will if they're going to survive.
Yes, the thing is, you know, with the apprenticeship, it's
Mhm.
more, you know, less people involved. You know,
Sure.
you can have, or actually, maybe historically, that's also maybe how schools really came to be. You know, from these apprenticeships, then you have that more formalized. So I think there's, or at least I hope, I think that it's, I think this alternative of kind of returning to apprenticeships is
Sure.
uh, more
If you
better
think about it,
than,
like, you know, the elite schools have relationships with some of the wealthiest companies in the world, right?
yeah.
And
Mhm.
it's, you know, they maintain relationships. And one way to do that is to say, hey, we can give you a feed of candidates. You evaluate them very early before they get to the point
Yeah.
where we brand them, right? And
Mhm.
send them out. And so they get to get experience, you get to get, you know, labor, and we get to put out people that are more qualified for what you need than just a typical liberal arts, or even, well, you know, even within a number of schools. When you take a look at engineering schools, they're more akin to, in the kind of training that they have, they're more akin to trade schools than they are to your
Yeah.
general liberal arts training. And same with nursing
Mhm.
schools and so on, right? It's the emphasis is really on having practical skills that you could take out and you can use with you. So I think, you know, to your point, I think you're right. There are probably going to be opportunities for new types of training to emerge, and how people are going to do it. I remember, I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is. Thomas Friedman, I think it was, who was a columnist at the New York Times, and he wrote a book called "The World Is Flat" when we were going through all of this outsourcing at the time. And I myself had been an outsourced manager. I had run a team in Chennai, and had firsthand run into problems with that very, very early on, when that was like all the rage, right? It's like that's what we should all do. And a lot of the tech skills that you need, you know, if you have an educated workforce someplace else, they can do the job. And you know, the thing was, at the time, I remember this was just a little after the .com crash, and I had to
Mhm.
do my first layoffs, right? And they always tell you in economic theory is that the people that get laid off first are usually like the lowest on the skill level. Um,
Mhm.
and in fact, that's not necessarily true, right? Because I had
Yeah.
guys that had spent, you know, more years than I had in school. You know, I had guys that had PhDs that were working for me, that had spent a lot of time and done postgraduate work, that had come into the .com because, hey, money, right? And they had spent a lot of time and effort. And Friedman's basically said, listen, you know, stop crying about the fact that your job has disappeared, just retrain. And I think to myself, and I wrote a comment that either the New York Times or he removed later on, saying, you're telling me that somebody that gets a very specialized skill that takes them 12 years to get to can just retrain.
Yeah.
Are they going to spend another 12 years retraining? What is your solution?
Yeah,
Not
that reminds me.
Mhm.
That was later on. They did the same thing. I think when it was issue of like with the coal miners getting laid off and
Yeah.
everything, and I just wrote, "Oh, just learn to code," uh, and it kind of got to bite them in the in the behind, because a few years later, a lot of the journalists got laid off. So
Mhm.
people obviously not feeling any charity because of how they were treating everybody else said, oh, just learn to code, your own advice, which of course they did not take well.
I mean, there is, you know, retraining is something that can be done, but there is a cost to it. Not everybody retrains at the same level and speed. And then certain things require far more, you know, it's one thing to fix a couple of functions here and there. It's another thing to understand like what is actually happening on the machine and why your code is so fucking slow.
Yep.
Right?
Tell me about it. I'm dealing with that right now.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, what is going on behind that? And I think that's one of the other things that AI hides, which is it can be a very useful tool for helping you get past the problem, because it's seen many of those problems. It can say, here is a snippet of code that if you use this, it will get you past your problem, but it doesn't necessarily help you understand your problem. Right?
Yeah.
And so the thing is, you are not necessarily in a better place having used it. And I think that's one thing where if you are a skilled party and you use these tools, it really 10x's you.
Mhm.
Because yes, it gets you to the answer, but then you actually can look at it, you can understand why. Because you have the foundational information to help you get there. But the more you abstract things away, and you and I are from the Meteor community, we know this to be true, right? Which is Meteor abstracts away a lot of very complex information. And when you come to it for the first time, it's magic. It just does this. You know, I can use a package and I can build a site and everything's great, until you run into something where the shape of the information that you're pulling in doesn't fit the return value, right? And now it's saying you're getting an error and you have no idea why. And I've seen many of these in Slack and on Meteor forums where people put like their stack trace in, and it tells you right in the stack trace what the problem is, right? But either they have not developed the skill enough to be able to read their error logs to be able to understand what error is being said, or they don't care. And it tells you something. I'm not trying to knock anybody. I'm just saying, you know, that the tools are there to help you, but it's not there to, it's not going to obviate the fact that you need to know what's going on, and that's on you. And so even though you may not require as much knowledge as professionally trained people, it doesn't take that obligation away from you if you're going to have a deep understanding of what's going on. So everything is great and rosy when your app is running fine. It's when things don't work that kind of, as they say, it separates the boys from the men, so to speak, right? The kids from the adults.
And I think another big thing I want to also add here is that not everybody can, retrain to something new, because, like, for example, like learn to code. You know, coding is, you have to have a very specific mindset, and I've seen people trying to get in and utterly failing because they just don't have if we want to oversimplify the necessary IQ, which in this case, mean the mathematics, the could say maybe OCD, looking at the code and beating it until it does what you want, and understand, even like language skill, because in a way, it's a language, it's in the name, so that in itself, it's a very specific field, and that goes for that. So there's also kind of this managerial way of viewing things, that it's just okay, it's just person, it's just a number on a spreadsheet that's mutable to whatever you wanted, which is not the case. And that's kind of also going back to, I think, apprenticeships, that it will be really get people who really want to go into it. And I think what kind of, I would say, the dystopian future towards, I think, which we are currently heading, is more atomization of people, of being more and more individual, and separation from community, which I think is bad. And in my ideal, kind of what I want to do is, I think, because the atomization breeds a lot more societal issues, which
are you saying atomization or optimization? Atomization, so getting down to like just the individual.
Yes, because then it's and from that you could say the managerial optimization of all those things. Okay, instead of trying, Google did this in a way, I would say, maybe just because they were so focused on optimizing their developers,
Mhm.
You see the crazy stories about having the amazing food bars, the developers, laundry being taken care of by other people, all that stuff, and that was all in the purpose, so they don't have anything else on the mind except the job.
Yeah.
So even it's perfect, but eventually that is not that becomes, I would say, in the long term, especially a detriment, not just for the person, because they are when something like get completely separated from the average human experiences, and because you can optimize and kind of replace for time being the human needs as well, with of course increasing costs based on what it is. But eventually, as you have that more the separation from, so you could say, the everyday experience, that also creates a problems in of themselves, because then what the products they produce, these people suddenly only align to people like themselves, and not people who have you could say other needs like family and so on. So I would personally, I would love to see and this is kind of what the promise and has been promised for centuries, which still has to materialize, is that promise with the AI and everything is, oh, we'll just have to work less, everything is going to cost less, and little work we do is going to generate us so much money that we'll live like millionaires live today, which I find wishful thinking. It has been thinking, or the promise of the past, and in a way it has come true. Today we live much more comfortable than even noblemen of the past,
in like
yes,
600 years ago. It's
but because that's lot thanks to the advancement, but we have other
I have
issues.
A lot of blue-collar clothes, by the way.
Yes.
So, if you remember that the indigo dye was
yeah, but just recently I saw a nice Twitter that kind of compared the old clothing and with the new, and kind of what made the old clothing. And the big thing is about today's clothing, it's very I would use it stale, but it doesn't have, for example, in the past as a man, I would really wear more elaborate suits. There would be layers. It would be more 3D. And now we can see just usually one color, maybe something here or there. It's very plain, nothing special. So, and that's part of the optimization, because it's much more easier to put that into a factory process and have that be delivered on a mass scale than the more complex and interesting clothes. So then, of course, the argument's okay. We'll have more of everybody will be able to afford these cheap clothes and everything, and then of course the rage for people who want to have something more interesting are going to get the more elaborate clothes, which to a certain degree is true. But I think what we've also seen is kind of the culture in general move towards this as the as kind of the standard, like, and even high, like fashion. You don't really see people even today, which I kind of break away, you could say, from the tech culture, is that every time I get an opportunity, or I got to a meeting and everything, I dress up. So, and if I was going to an office, I would be going dressed up pretty much every day, maybe with a few exceptions when it's like tropical weather, but even then, because inside you have AC. So and I think that's kind of like my personal thing that I want to get more out of is because I don't feel, yes, this is kind of comfortable, but it's not enriching me, I would say, culturally, and I kind of feel I'm starving in this. And the same thing is like with human connections. I remember reading studies that people have less friends, which I can attest to, which is also my case, than they used to have in past. In the past, it was people thought they actually had more friends and more close friends than they actually had. Today, people are and today people are reporting that people even if they have somebody they consider like their best friends, it's maybe like one at most. Sometimes they don't even report any, and that number is increasing. The same thing, we could see the size of the families, the interconnectedness with the families in general. It's also very specific difference from in America, where it's it's an immigrant country, or people came in and then they move across the country and so on.
Well, and then there was a social convention after the 1940s towards
Yeah.
the nuclear family, right? Which is just
Exactly.
a core group, and it gives you more mobility. And then because there's lots of opportunities in different parts of the United States, so why stay with the extended family?
Yes, and part of that is because the economic times were absolutely amazing. It was the golden
Yes.
age. I think we still, to a certain degree, are in the golden age, but especially.
Well, I think we've also discovered that there's some shortcomings to just having a
Yes.
nuclear family, right? Because when you have families that end up in divorce, now you have children that have no anchor, right? Because the grandma and grandpa are not anywhere nearby, uncles and aunts are not. You don't have that social support structure.
Yes,
Again,
and that breeds even more problems.
Yeah, I am just talking out of my butt, so to speak, because I'm not an anthropologist. I'm not a psychologist. I do want to just point those things out. So this is just a guy that is giving an opinion on social structures and the impact of different social structures and so on. But I think that this is that there is some truth to that, which is when you do have larger families, and when you find that there are places that have these extended families, maybe the grandparents step in to help out when there is difficulties with the parents, and we've seen this before in certain communities and certain ethnicities, where they've helped to create some kind of social stability where none might exist otherwise, and children might get abandoned.
Yeah,
So
I've done I think three episodes about my kind of proposal, the Great House, and this is something I've been seeing, and it's based on traditional structure of my region, family structure, plus some additional things. But this is what I've been seeing lately a lot, because we had some, you could say, quite a significant family conflicts recently, and the big thing is part of it's us spreading more around, kind of losing this connection. But the big thing is, with everything, there has been also, especially in our part of the world after the Velvet Revolution, this kind of adoption of Western values in many things, especially like on child raising and moving forward with families. So we had, of course, significant increase in divorces, many things not going to, but big part of that was, we don't want to really push, onto our children. We want them to be, free and all that stuff. But with that, they have not even pushed on us, the previous generation, their values. And I think big part of that's because they had no idea how. Because before, since everybody was close together, you gained those values, the generational knowledge, through osmosis. Because you were there, you're constantly in that, so you constantly, learned about all the uncles, all your grandfathers, all that stuff, and that's missing. I had to really, maybe at some points, maybe a little bit annoying of trying to kind of fill the family tree, get even like info about, my generation of the family, because my generation of the family, when we have like big family meetings, I'm most of the times like the only one from my generation there, because I have interest. My sister is abroad, so that's a bit impossible for her to make it. But other than that, my cousins, not interested. Part of it is because of how the schooling system is. So if they are at university, it's usually during, around the Christmas and winter vacations. So, and that's also time where they have their finals. So they are at home studying, because our system is that you need to just get the information, remember the information. And so it's that annoying. That's why I went to America for school. One of the reasons. So that plays a role. So, and then also my generation and younger generation, they're just not coming. And and I don't know when they come. It's like usually I'm seeing them for the first time.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's a problem. So this, and since there was no concrete effort
Mhm.
to kind of pass down that knowledge,
Mhm.
it's getting lost. And suddenly, when we have now, clash about, let's say, social events
Mhm.
like marriages, which today are completely different structure than used to in the past. There's a clash because the parents and grandparents have certain expectation of how things are going to look, and since we don't have any of those, let's say, cultural tradition or even religious traditions,
Yeah.
there comes a conflict because the newlyweds want it completely different. They want to kind of use the cool modern things, for example, wedding in the fields or on a hill or something like that, only super minimalistic. Big funny thing is I constantly have a problem is whenever I get anybody or like a girlfriend or something like that,
Mhm.
immediately my parents like all over me. They want to know everything. They want to know when the marriage is going to be, how many children are we going to have. And it's like, we just went on 2 dates. Calm
Yeah.
down. And the thing is, my generation is like, we are very private in those things, while their generations was, say, I'd say much more open. So these things are starting to clash. So I think unless we want to have a total breakdown on this thing, I personally think that there needs to be a serious rethinking. And I think that going forward, families that
Yeah.
kind of establish this more, going from like, you could say, just kind of like, the osmosis method to
Mhm.
more establish, okay, this is what we do, this is why we do it,
Yeah.
these are our family values, here are written down, here are family mottos, and this is how I looked on the noble houses of the Middle Ages and onwards, because a lot of them, they are still around, and they are wealthy partially because of generational wealth, but also they pass down because of the great histories of their family. They pass that down. So I think that's a inspiration. That's kind of what the great, pretty much that's the central point of the the great house that I
So the
kind of
great houses,
written
yes.
down.
So
To
I
have
wanted
that.
to ask you, where do you see AI having an impact there? And before we spend a lot of time there, I also want to um, mention, as you were talking about the change in education and the change in needed skills, there are, and I guess because the focus is large language models, right? This is what is kind of driving people. There've been a number of people, and I've been trying to find the essays, and I haven't found. I thought Bill Gates had mentioned this, but it's not him. It's probably somebody else. But had mentioned that the key skills that are going to be used for interacting with these models are skills from the humanities. And I thought that was interesting, right? Because we've been technocrat, like
Yeah.
moving more and more towards like STEM for years, and now there's been money taken away from the humanities and arts because it's like you've got limited resources, you've got to figure out where you're going to allocate them, and now they're saying, hey, but the people that are skilled or will have the skills to be able to engage properly with these models are people that have these humanities and art skills. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I'm not sure whether or not it's just folks in the humanities trying to assert, by the way, we have some value and
Yeah.
and trying to preempt, or if there's something there. So there are a number of different essays written on this. I remember reading a few of these. I'm like, you know, I
I
have an
think
undergraduate degree in the
a
arts, right?
nice comparison
Mhm.
is today, could say, managers or bosses of big companies
Mhm.
do a lot of hustling, lot of work, uh, and I would say a lot of this just also to kind of appear that they're a lot of work. While in the past they were doing a lot of less work. Say on you could say on the daily basis, which
Mhm.
of course got them a lot of scorn because taking big salaries and seem like compared to the regular worker not doing as much work. And I think this kind of has been due to the change of understanding the role, or I would say misunderstanding the role of kind of the boss. And this I'll get kind of to that, which before was for the boss or like the managers to be learned in, as you said, liberal arts, to know the big context, to have worldview, to understand all the things that impact the business and beyond, so that they can make, say, the 4 or 5 critical decisions a year that affect the entire business with the best of that. And instead they now kind of moved, okay, we'll have a committee at which part of kind of with social and everything, why there are so many committees is because nobody wants to take responsibility. So it just we all agreed, we voted, you cannot blame any single one person here in the committee for this bad decision. And so it's also kind of taking the responsibility. But also part of that is because now they have to focus even more on the job instead of kind of like also watching the rest of the world to make the necessary corrections and everything for the business to move forward. Is that I think we are getting more and more or bad decisions happening in business, or they just focus. Another example would be like with Boeing, just focus on the stock, and that's everything that matters. That's our Northern Star, and now they have issues that their planes are falling apart due to bad engineering.
Well, I think a lot of that is this optimization towards specific metrics, right?
Yes,
and so
that's another thing. So I kind of want to now take this to say the liberal arts in school and everything. Historically, pretty much the universities were liberal arts, and the technological stuff was added much later. And as you said, there has been a lot of optimization towards the technical skills and doing that because of how complex the technical fields have become. And a lot of the times I've been harping this for a long time. For example, like ethics in AI class, optional. That should be a required subject. It's kind of hard. I remember reading this post from some electronic engineer or something like that, who actually had was like some sort of like doing orientation, and certainly they were like harping about ethics and how we should build for better of humanity. And then once he got like offer, I think from Raytheon or one of like the big military companies, like his advisor and his teacher were like saying, oh, how great opportunity, you should take it. And it was like commented like, after all this constant talk about how shouldn't use our inventions for warfare and all stuff, and now everybody is harping me to take this military company contract. It's like on the we are doomed as a society. So I think that's a big one. But at the same time, I was like very conscious about all these things. So I took these intro to critical thinking, all these classes at the class. But most of my peers, they couldn't care less. I would say they did not even when I for example was chairing the local anime convention. One of the things I was like, okay, I want everybody to go to the Leadership Institute and take the leadership classes there, so you can become better leaders, because you are leading large departments with tens of people in them and everything. And only few did it, and the rest I had to really on the very few I think I had to really force their hand, or really force them to go there, because they did not see the value of it as there. So that's one thing. And at least for a few of them that I got the chance to speak years later, a few of them, it's with a lot of these things, this kind of goes back, I've took this because of my interest in the humanities and leadership and all that stuff. But a lot of these things that you kind of get there, that you talk about, that you learn, not just in the moment it makes you better, but also long term, because then you think about them, everything. So even if you force people to go there at the moment, because we had like intro to critical thinking back in high school. And back then, I just love it because at the textbook we had at the beginning of each chapter, there were awesome quotes, and I love them because for my writing. But at the time, those lessons in themselves didn't give me anything immediately, but it was in the long term. So I'm very much for kind of returning more towards the, let's say, traditional model of education. But the problem then is, how do you kind of balance it out? And in the bachelor's, yes, you have a lot of, let's say, liberal arts. But I think there needs to be, I think, rethinking by the universities of how do we kind of make what subjects should be the required ones, and what should be like the offering in general that kind of in the category of recommended that, or that like everybody should make, because you have the required subject, then you have, let's say, specific optional ones, and then you have like general optional ones, which usually is like the few that you take like for hobbies. So I think that there needs to be very much rethinking towards how do we kind of give say like the tool with critical thinking, which I think should be a required subject for any STEM students to have. So those are, I think that universities will have to resolve and kind of focus more, because it's very easy to focus on all the technical and all the sexy things, but and this also kind of, I think, goes with aesthetics as well, because even as I was back at RIT, they have like this new amazing building sheds for lot of things. It's an amazing looking building, but when I was like, well, it's the steel and windows, the modern ones, which I found very sterile. And I kind of take the approach with, let's say, libraries and universities, everything that should kind of be, or at least even in architecture, they should inspire awe. They should, be inspirational. It's like if you're religious and you come to a church or you come to a mosque, it should have that, divine feeling. And I think that's one of the steps that needs to be taken. And, especially since there has been the massive drive to get everybody into university, which I also think is completely wrong on the society. I think UK has only 50% of all students to graduate from university, which is utterly insane. I hate it also because personally it devalues my degree as well. So because if everybody has it, then everybody has bachelors. Okay,
well,
then
that's
everybody
the argument on exclusivity. I don't see that necessarily.
But from that, I also kind of back to the aesthetics there, is that this is something special, something that at the end there will be more expected of you as the result, but right now it's okay, you're just a factory worker.
Well, there are for instance a number of university students that go in that are just like, I've got to do my 4 years, right? It's like military service. I've got to do this, and I'm going to come out, and it's just it's just a hurdle I have to get past in order to get the job, right? And the thing is, like, the university, what they learn in university or what they do in university has no real meaning and no real value. And so in that way they devalue it, right? Because you have people that don't really want to be there, but are going through because they must go through in order to get to the brass ring, the goal, whatever you want to call it. And I think, for me, that's a problem. In the United States, we have so many universities. So you have universities for people that really want to be there, and then universities that'll just give you a degree at the very end of it, and all of the stuff in between. So it's become like an industry. It's like, okay,
yes, well, it is an industry, and
you need a 4-year paper, and so we you could choose from the line which is the one that is going to do well for you.
I think especially now with the AI, it
Yeah.
is going to be, I think there is going to be a significant correction also, because a lot of people, start coming out and, saying, especially how this costs have skyrocketed. That's changing the attitudes towards higher schooling. So there is, I think, going to be a significant correction, or there has to be, or there's going to be a collapse of the industry. And
Well, already there is the sense, well, in the United States, it's happening, right? I mean, there
Yeah.
are schools that are going out of business. I mean, there are schools that are shutting down because they don't get enrollment. And then there are dissatisfied students all over. I mean, this is why Biden has these forgiveness plans on student loans that are out there, because there are many students that, 30, 40 years later are still carrying loans because the value of the degree that they got doesn't translate into the type of income that they're
Yeah.
looking for. And I think, by the way, that if you look at your degree as, I get this thing and it's going to translate into a certain amount of income for me, is the wrong way to look at a university degree and a university education, right? I think the thing is, you're supposed to build certain skills, and those skills are the things, and it could be leadership, it could be moral authority, it could be, some specific, training as a scientist or whatever to contribute back. And by the way, in the sciences, you don't make a ton of money. I mean, it's
a lot of issues there, I know. So
it's a lot of issues, but at the same time, though, that's not why you get that degree, right? It's if you're looking at it as an economic ticket, there are a handful of schools that'll do that for you, right? It'll create connections that you're going to need. It's going to get you into that first good job that's going to give you that baseline salary that'll allow you to go further up. And of course, if they have a good alumni connection and you milk that connection, you can do very well for yourself. But that is not the case in many places. And then, of course, some of these elite institutions are taking students in that are already well-to-do to begin with. So for them, yes, it is just a 4-year thing because grandpa went there, daddy went there, great-grandpa went there, right? And so it's a tradition that we go there and so on. So you go there, and then you'll continue that fine tradition of association with that university, and then you move on. But your future's already spoken for because your family has that fortune, right? So, there are a handful of these. Like Yale is very clear about, like, we train tomorrow's leaders, right? I'm not knocking Yale. I mean, Yale has produced some high quality leaders in the United States and elsewhere. There are people that come from foreign countries that get their university degree here, but those tend to be very well positioned people to begin with, right? If you are the crown prince of a country and you come to America and you go to Yale and you get your degree and then you go back, it really hasn't elevated you other than to say, like, well, you've got an education from, a high quality university, and that is the association. But it wasn't as if it took you from like a poor citizen in your country and then made you crown prince later on because you got that education. So there may have been a few revolutionaries that may have gone to Yale and then gone on and toppled their governments. I don't know, but that would be kind of interesting to see and find out. I think we have too many of these. I think this notion that everybody gets a university degree, there is this notion of what a university degree used to mean, which was, it used to mean that, beyond the fact that you got an education, is that you did something hard for 4 years and you were able to see something over a long term to its conclusion, right? Because in many cases, it was not a very easy thing to complete that entire 4 years.
Yeah.
And then to come out. And that would give a signal to say, like, if you went into this firm and you took on the role of a manager, you had a project and it was a multi-year project, you are more likely to complete that than somebody that just got out of high school. If we were just looking for some signal to indicate, your degree of commitment and your follow through, right?
Yeah. Another thing also here is, because this kind of push for more degrees is also generational as well. For example, like in Britain, say, because the older generations is okay, degree has a lot of value. And it's also like another thing I've noticed is kind of this fixation. You kind of at one point fixate your worldview
Yeah.
I've seen it with a lot of people. So you fix it. Okay, for example, New York in the 2000s, because you live there or you have that from the movies, and you're just unable then to accept, unless through like some shock therapy or something, that New York has changed.
Yeah.
That the situation is different, or that it,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
so, and the same thing with like degrees. So because, you know, you are from the generation where it was, say, rare, or, you know, it had that value.
Exactly.
So you cannot kind of realize that if you have more people coming with the degree, that the value of the degree decreases.
Supply and demand chain, right?
Exactly.
The thing is, like, the pricing changes when you have like more and more supply of something, then the price comes down in terms of the value of the thing that you're pricing. And if the pricing is somebody with a university degree, it's economic rent, right? If there are few of them and they're in high demand and there's not enough, people will pay more to get that commodity, to get that person with a university degree. But then if there is such a large supply now, right? And I'm not entirely sure how to evaluate one against another except for brand, then how do I then give you that economic rent? How do I give you that extra outside what the market is really willing to pay, because there is such a large supply now, right? I don't know how to do this, so it comes down, right? And I think this is, you know, it was funny because my dad would always like talk to me about this. He was a professor, he was an economist. And he would talk about, like, and back then, by the way, right, like, you had small data sets. You didn't have like these massive data sets of information that you do today. And so the general trend was like, you know, if you had a university degree, you know, on the long term, you earned a lot more, to the tune of over $1 million in lifetime earnings over others that did not have one. But it's, you know, when you take a look at that, there's a lot of information inside that is unstated, right? So what kind of university, like if we start breaking down your university degrees into different tranches, like what kinds of university degrees were actually like moving that, you know, median up, right? And which ones were not? You know, like if you had an art history, and I don't mean to knock anybody with an art history degree, but the fact of the matter is, like, a lot of people that have art history or craft degrees or fine arts degrees tend to be on the lower tier in terms of earnings in their lifetimes. Maybe relative to their peers who don't have degrees or that are in that, they might have earned more because they could teach at a university, for instance, if they couldn't make their money, you know, selling their products. So that would help elevate them. Who knows, right? So they could go out there and they could get jobs as teachers as well as doing their craft, versus people who could only like do their craft. I don't know, but my point is that until you dig down into the information, you really don't know what's driving those numbers, and those correlations can be incredibly misleading. And, you know, when you're taking a look at, as I say, from my father's generation, where they're looking at numbers from like the 1930s up to the 1980s, time's different, right? From the 1980s on, where we have more and more kids graduating from universities, right? How does that trend continue? I know, for instance, that I pay more to my mechanic on a per hour basis than I pay to my cardiologist. Okay, that is frightening to me, you know. On a per hour
reminds me of the South Park special where all the mechanics becomes, you know, multi-billionaires because nobody knows how to do those things.
Yeah, you find one that's competent, that's got experience, that is honest, and they can name that price, because there's so few of them going into that relative to people going away to the universities. I went when I was a public official. I got invited to a number of these like New Year's dinners and so on, right? And I got invited to this luncheon for the electricians union. And I go to this place, and I'm not expecting very much. I have a nice suit on and so on, but I'm like, all right, these guys are electricians, right? And I go to their building. They have a building, and it is massive. And when you walk in it, from the outside, it doesn't look like anything, but from the inside, it is gorgeous, and it is well appointed, and it is plush. And we go into the auditorium, and they have an auditorium. And in it, we're sitting down, and every single one of these mechanics is in a very nice suit. a far more expensive suit than I'm wearing. All right, I'm not mechanics. I'm sorry. These are electricians, and they're sitting around. And one of the things they're doing at this is they're giving scholarships to the children that have done well enough in school to go on to university. And they're getting full scholarships to different universities, private universities typically. And I'm watching these kids go up there, and many of these kids are coming out from some Catholic, private school, so it's not a public school kid. And I'm looking and I'm thinking there is a lot of freaking money here, right? That is in this room that you don't think about, and the idea that you cannot make a great living in the trades is nonsense when you see it. It's absolutely nonsense. So the fiction is like you can only do well if you go to university. There's a bunch of baloney.
I especially in today's day and age, it has completely flipped, I would say.
Yeah.
So if I had children that would be like university age and like came to me, I want to go in, so it's like unless you pay for it, no, like just because of how crazy, like in America especially, how crazy the price is. So that would be
and now one of the things that the unions are doing is emphasizing just how good it is to do a trade, because they're like, listen, you go to university and for 4 years you are paying them. You come into a trade, and except for the tools that you buy, when you are learning as an apprentice, you are getting paid as you go along. So as you are learning, you are earning. And so this notion that you're going to wait for 4 years, you're going to have a loan that has interest, that for 4 years you're doing this and you've got nothing to show other than, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because people will say, well, education is something that's inside and it can never get taken away from you. Actually, there's burnout in your neurons. So yeah, it does get taken away from time, but the part is that these applied fields, and as you're pointing out, that even within tech, like if tech goes along this model, this apprenticeship model, there is some benefit right there too, which is you are not.
That's also like with RIT, part of the benefit of the co-op is that you are learning and getting paid. So I think, especially, I think that that's going to become an even more important aspect of I would say technical education, that it's no longer 4 years you paying an institution to learn stuff, and then you start hopefully earning money. And because with AI, that's not going to happen. No, if this keeps up, because nobody is going to hire a fresh graduate, because the AI is going to give it to me for like 10 cents an hour or something like that. So
I think there's also the change in opportunity. So when I was younger and the personal computer was just invented, right, there was not really a sense that there were a lot of people that had much experience programming at a very early age. You didn't have the opportunity. It's just the machines weren't there. There were a handful of people like Bill Gates that had access to a time sharing system and could learn to do that. And so you're very privileged from that point of view. But for the most part, like for people that come from my generation, you didn't have that in the same way. The language that you might learn on was BASIC typically, right? Or Pascal if you if you had something in school. And then the real production language at the time was C, and if you were in defense, it was ADA, right? That was being used at the time. And Fortran and COBOL were the other languages that were used in commercial systems. And you didn't have access to that as a young person, typically, like those languages, right? They just weren't there. But today, like kids wake up and they have a full, if you get a Mac, right, it's got an entire Unix system on it. You've got, you can get Xcode for free, right? And if you're interested, you can demonstrate that interest at a very early age. If you remember, there was that kid that would come to the Meteor meetups, right, when he was like 14 or 15, that had built an entire product, right, and had learned JavaScript and had learned other things and was out there. And there's more of an opportunity to do that today. And so I think when you're going to university, and I have a colleague of mine, my friend Catherine, who teaches at Brooklyn College, mentions to me that a lot of her students, her first year students that are coming in, like they're unaware of programming. And trying to start from zero, where there are students that are coming in that, by the way, have had like 4 or 5 years of experience because they've been building little things. They've been building like Discord bots, right, for themselves and doing things like that, or may have even built their own applications before that. They may not know how to do structured coding properly. They may not understand how to, build something in a way that that is object oriented. They may not understand different data structures or algorithms, but it doesn't mean that they're unfamiliar with, like, getting a piece of code out. And I think that's the thing, right? Which is, folks today that are coming in, either there is a group of people that are like, I'll get a degree and I'll get a job because it says computer science, but then they have no skill in terms of being able to actually like express what it is that needs to be done through code. So it's like an illiteracy. Like, they may understand how to put words together, but they can't write a sentence, right? Or, they can put sentences together, but they can't write an essay because they just can't bring new sets of ideas together and put them into a complete thought that expresses what they want to get out. And that's effectively what a program is. It's taking bits and pieces of ideas, bringing it together, and producing something coherent. And I think it's interesting. We run into this problem today. I think it's going to become exacerbated by the fact that you have these tools like Copilot that can make assembling something much easier. But again, not having the foundational knowledge is a problem. And then not understanding how to solve a problem is a problem, right?
Well, solving the problems in the future is going to be write it into Copilot, the problem, and await the answer.
That might be true. Yeah, absolutely.
So it will be the new Google Stack Overflow all in one.
Stack Overflow is helpful from the point of view, though, that people tend not to just write the answer code. They try to explain why they're writing that and why it's useful and why it's not. And if somebody writes something and with no explanatory material there are usually other people that pop in that'll either challenge them or will fill in the explanation if they can. I think that's one of the value I find with Stack Exchange, Stack Overflow, is sort of like, what's the reasoning behind it, right? So I don't know. I haven't played with Copilot yet. I've seen it in clips and so on. As running the open source project, do you have access to Copilot?
I have it integrated into my web store. So I have it not just for open source, but for everything pretty much.
Well, there are two ways to get it, right? One is to pay for it, and the other is, I think, it's given to open source project contributors for free.
I think I have it. Let's take a look over here. So here we have Copilot. I think I have there is like also two versions. There is the free version and the industry standard. Too young for to be an industry standard. There is the free version. Let's go here for the pricing. Yeah, the individual and the enterprise. So I think I will have, but I think I do have some sort maybe of a free version of it, or specific testing version. Let me take a look here, because how do I have it? Let's see.
Yeah, Copilot is free for the open source contributors if you're heavily contributing to open source by creating libraries or fixing bugs in existing popular libraries.
Let's see. I think that might be why I have it. Let me check here. I set it up a while ago, so let me.
And I don't know if they've changed it, but the intention was also to give it to enrolled students that are enrolled in a
Yeah.
high school, college, or an educational institution.
Mhm.
You know,
Okay,
as
so I
long
have
as
an
it's
active
Mhm.
subscription for Copilot,
Okay.
but I do not.
So
I
my
don't see
understanding is that
if I paid for it or if I have it from
Hmm.
the open source. Let me double check here. Maybe I can see it on my
on
billing.
billing, it probably should tell you, right?
Yeah. Yes, I have. You're eligible to use GitHub Copilot for free, so I have it as a part of me being
Yeah,
the open source
because you're
contributor.
exactly. So yeah, that is nice. I forgot what we were talking about now.
Yes. So
All right. It's
how
noon.
2
It's
hours
noon.
since we started, so I think that will be
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
gonna.
time for final thoughts on the future. I kind of, to summarize it, I do believe maybe a little bit. I think what's needed is kind of return to tradition, because in this rush forward, we've kind of lost a lot of, could say, traditional values, structures, and everything. So I think we need to have a big rethinking of this, unless we want to end in a cyberpunk dystopia.
You don't think we're there already?
We're definitely at the beginning of it. So I think there needs to be really that, and I think you will have successful individuals all the time, but I think if you want to have a multi-generational or family that gets successful or
Mm.
kind of survives beyond, more thinking needs to be put into it, more structure, especially now when it's becoming, I'd say, more difficult from this, and hopefully we won't end like a mouse dystopia. But that's for another episode, for another time. I think kind of that also goes to the industry with AI. These new tools are going to present a big challenge to the traditional structures, and I think big part of this is going to kind of again be returning to tradition, or let's say traditional approaches with apprenticeships and all those kind of more refocus, let's say, more on the big picture.
Yeah.
So that's how I see potential, kind of, I would say, the saving grace, or saving how to kind of save things. Otherwise we are getting, I would say, on a very shaky and unstable ground.
Here's there's a lot to parse on this, and I don't think that
we could go for another 4 hours. I know.
we could, but it's if I were to summarize, I think every time you have a disruptive technology that shows up, it has an impact on society, and the question is, what does society do in order to either maintain its structure or not? There are opportunities for some people. For some people, there's going to be an opportunity for great wealth and for an elevation of their social status because of how they are able to use those technologies, right? And advance. And so I think that is a very complicated and complex topic to discuss. I don't know that I'm equipped to add very much to it. I think I can look like 2 hours down the road. I don't know that I can look very much further than that. I do think that we've seen a general trend away from the nuclear family in the United States, more towards like these intergenerational families now. That there's been a recognition that something is lost when you get into these isolated and more autonomized as you were saying, structures. And I see it now with my child and her generation, where there is the sort of like, there's a wandering and there's a loss. There's some of them that have strong communities, and that's great. Many of them, because of social media, and I think social media has had a lot more to do with this than anything else. Instead of trying to find your place within the immediate social structures that you're in, you're able to kind of like fragment and find a social structure that is more akin to your own, viewpoint, your own mindset. And so what you have is, but that's stretched across the entire globe, right? So you have these narrow communities that are not physically interconnected and may never ever see each other. They're just in a virtual space, which has an impact because we are somatic creatures. We are creatures of body, right? And we need to have those interactions with real human beings. And I think that matters. And so, we're finding that people are far more lonely, is what the studies tell us, that they don't have satisfying relationships. And I think you can have an intellectual relationship and even cross distance and boundaries, but there's something to be said that when you're in the physical space with somebody else, that changes, the entire essence of that relationship. I think it enriches it and it can become more. In the same way that if you're with somebody that's toxic to you, being physically close to them can make it even worse, right? So I think there's something to be said about physical presence and being there. And this from your taking trips and seeing friends and seeing people in your community. It's one thing to have that online relationship with that community, but it's another thing when you actually are able to physically meet them and sort of like, it's almost like you're creating the endpoint, the real endpoint to that relationship. It's like now you've met, you might have had a drink or, eaten some food together or just gone on a walk or something. And it is just that much more enriching, that much more fulfilling. So I think it's we move here and then we're also moving here at the same time. So I don't know we're not quite on equilibrium. We're moving around and it's going to be hard. And I think there are going to be some groups that are going to survive and flourish out of this and some that won't. And AI, as it stands, is going to be a technology that either helps enable that or helps reduce it. And the question is that it's always the people that lead the charge that are going to be able to pull the people along with them in one of those directions or the other. So the hope is that we don't have people that have a sort of a dystopian view or an overly romanticized view of the individual and technology. It's like, I am on my own. I'm garbed with this, gun belt of AI, and I'm going to conquer the world on my own. I don't need anybody else. And I think that is the absolute wrong view of humanity, because we are a social animal and we are better as a social group than we are if we're just doing our own thing, because with a very, very big cannon, you can do a lot of destruction all by yourself, to the detriment of everybody else around you. It's when you have others around you that are saying, hey, maybe you want to rethink this, that social pressure may mollify like what you might think is the thing to do, because there are external consequences that are shared to you from others that you may not even think about on your own, or you might minimize how other people might perceive it, right? So,
yeah.
So I think that's all I can give you. I don't really have a lot.
That's I think more than enough.
Yeah.
That kind of also, well, I would say I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And yeah, especially I think in the industry, I think kind of for what kind of my goal is to establish my own companies, get them running, and from that have them, especially with the universe, potentially be more like a family heritage, or at least one of the family potential businesses that my children and grandchildren can kind of find themselves in. And for them and other people, I hope to establish, if everything works fine, say an apprenticeship. And I would kind of say maybe experiment with a new corporate culture that are more focused on on say, maybe again going back to tradition of really either long-term or life employment and on the families. So really allowing only a few people in, but those people in kind of,
Something that has a real social contract, right?
yes.
Yeah, I like that, and I agree with that. I think that there are companies that are basically just like optimization engines, which is like, we are just optimizing for the highest revenue,
Yeah.
or the most widgets that we're going to produce. That's along lines of AI right there, right? AI is basically, most machine learning is basically an optimizing engine of some kind, right? It's trying to find some optimal solution. There is this argument about being worried about AI, because if you have AI that optimizes for manufacturing the most amount of paper clips, then after it uses all the resources that it has, it's going to go take a look at other resources that you need to live on and figure out how can it convert those so that it can make paper clips, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is something that's been talked about before, and it's one of those cautionary tales. And people say, "Oh, it's we'll hand wave that away because that'll never happen." But the point is not so much that it will happen at that end extreme, but that there are people that think along these ways, which is like, the only problem that there is to solve is my problem, and the
Yeah.
hell with the rest of humanity. And if I don't think about humanity and the uncomfortable restrictions that humanity puts on me, that slows me down.
Yeah, I've seen a lot
Yeah.
of people in the technical fields only thinking about solving the current equation, the current bug, the
Yeah.
current problem,
Yeah.
not, or like the current task, and not thinking about the wider impacts. And I think that's sadly a lot of people around AI as well.
Mhm.
I've seen it, with their interactions and everything, and especially the engineers. So that's and with sci-fi, it's that's kind of this peering in the future of the potentials and discounting these, that's just never going to happen. You have to have a freaking damn good reason why this should not happen, because a lot of things like accidents happen. You have a
Yeah.
bug, and
But
like
if
that,
we,
which is the example with the paper clips.
yeah,
AI generation, that because it's a bug in the core programming.
it's interesting because people forget sometimes that prior to World War II and the rise of fascism, nationalism, and so on, you had this movement towards scientific management, right? How do we like scientifically optimize our production lines and so on, and how do we do this in a way that maximizes output? And what we get as the output of that is we have Siemens in Germany, during World War II, creating these batch ovens to get rid of human beings, right? To help maximize and solve that problem. So, like, without some kind of a moral framework or an ethical framework to constrain you from doing that, right? Without thinking about your humanity and human beings and your role in it. Yeah, you can maximize any algorithm that you want, but what's the consequence?
Yeah.
And
I
if you
think the big
those
thing
things,
here, sorry, Alan, to kind of jump into this, the big thing
sure,
here
yeah.
is having, I would say, strong family values and
Mhm.
strong family life for that, because at the end of the day, once you come back from work, you have to look them into the eyes and kind of live with the results of your consequences.
Yeah.
So that's like another thing, what I've noticed, and that's what's a common trope of, once your children are born, or
Yeah.
the first child is born, your entire view of the world changes. So I think that's a big one to take into
Yeah.
account, and that's, I think, why there should be much more push towards people having families, having children, because I think then afterwards it changes their view to be more long term, more communal. It's no longer just about me,
Mhm.
but I have a family to take care of. So That's
Well, we do find people on extremes on that spectrum
yes.
too. I
Well,
mean,
I'm telling we
they're
have
folks that
exceptions
basically
everywhere. So.
maximize. Yeah, they're maximizers also, in the sense of like, I need to maximize for my family alone, right, at the expense of everybody else, and that's where we get these sort of like tribalism, behaviors. There's good and bad in all of these things. The thing is, like, take the good parts as much as you can and try to minimize the bad parts as much as possible. So,
and
but we can go
think,
on that. I think that there's an opportunity for a discussion on technology ethics and morality, right? That we could probably, do at some point, because I think it's one of those things that is always, I think about these things a lot, because you want to build things and you want to go ahead, but it does stop you from taking advantage of opportunities, because if you're not like this single-minded maximizer, right, there's less of a chance that you're going to become like a billionaire or something like this, because these single-minded maximizers are basically like, I want these resources need to be under my control at the exclusion of others, right? Because I have in my head where it is beneficial and I can create the best benefit. You have to have that sort of like narcissism. And you also, and because it's narcissistic, right, it's at the exclusion of others. So, I don't think I'll ever be a billionaire because of that. But
same here.
Yeah. But all right. Well, listen, this was fun. It was interesting. I'm sure that there's plenty for others out there that are watching this that there is to agree with, but also to disagree with. And I think that is actually important, because if we're just in an echo chamber, that's not helpful. So if you have watched this, or are there right now and are watching this, but if you have watched this and you think that there are points that we made that are good, point them out to us. Thank you. And we'll try to maximize on that. No, I don't want to maximize on anything like that. But if there are points that you think that we talked about or brought up that you have a fundamental disagreement with, share it. And I think that's legit. And I think we'd like to hear from you.
Indeed. That said, also, if you want to sponsor me to have more of these discussions and nerd talks, you can sponsor me on GitHub via GitHub sponsors. The links is in the chat. But general github.com/sponsor/storytellercz. And so there you can sponsor me and my work in open source in general. We'll definitely pick this up. So please write your comments, tweet at me, or contact me in any way, preferably through comments, so that next time we can go maybe through some of the comments. I think definitely next time we have the long-awaited Techno-Optimist manifesto to go through, though we touch on that. I think pretty much today, completely without addressing it directly, but I think it's going to be fun to break it down apart, because that's, as you said, one of the maximizers, or it's pretty much a group of maximizers saying that they want to maximize everything.
Maximizers who have maximized and have maximum.
Yes.
Right.
So,
that's and then sharing their philosophy and trying to put a moral lipstick on top of it. It's interesting.
And as I said before you came up, I like the positive approach compared to the barrage of all the could say death cults and negativity about everything. So that's kind of, I like it. But my kind of response kind of to the shortcomings is the great house, and who knows, maybe we can produce something together that is also positive, but not say so destructive. Well, let us know in the comments what you think. And with that, thank you very much. That's it for today. Again, you can sponsor me on GitHub. And for those watching us at Meet Your Dispatches, we'll see you on Friday.
Take care now.